Okay, we're going to work on this categorical variables practice sheet. I want to show you an example of how to work through this, all right? So in the example, I'll show you how to do each of these objectives. So first thing is on our statistics page, if you go down to student information station, you can go to the Lock5 Stat website and grab the data sets. So data sets right here. Our data set is called student survey. It's all alphabetical. So when you get down here, student survey, XLS file, we'll open this up as a Google spreadsheet or as an Excel document. I'm going to show you this as a Google spreadsheet. So once you get here, you can just say File, Save as a Google Sheet, and that will open it up like this as a Google Sheet. So the example I'm going to give you is going to be with the higher SAT scores. Right? You can see there's several categorical variables here and also a whole bunch of different quantitative variables, but we're going to focus on the categorical. And I made a little table over here that I'm going to use. So I just put the variables math and verbal for SAT scores, and we're just going to do a count and turn that count into a proportion, and we can copy and paste this data table in for one of the questions off the sheet. So under count, if you've never done this before, I'm going to show you how you can use spreadsheets to do some formulas and calculations for you. So to do a calculation, you always start with an equal sign. And I want to do a count. So if I type that in, it gives me some options. I'm going to use the one called count if. What that means is count if you see the word math. All right. So the first thing is the range. The range is this whole column E. So I can just click on the E and it'll highlight that whole column. All right. You can see it here is E colon E. Put a comma after it. And the next thing is the criterion. And that's what is it that we're looking for. Count if you see the word math. So in quotes, I'm going to type in math. And my quotes and my parentheses, hit enter. We have 205 maths showing up. I can do the same thing for verbal. So I say equals, select the count if, the same range, E, comma, and in quotes, you're going to say verbal. I get 150. Now, there's about, I believe there's 362 or 363 total rows here. However, every now and then, if you scroll through this, like you can see one right here, there might be a cell that's blank. They didn't get that information from that particular student. So there's probably a few blanks in this. So that'll play out a little bit later. I just wanted to point that out. So for the total, I can say equals, and I can just simply do an addition problem here. So I can click on the 205, and it says cell T5. Say plus, click on the 150, hit enter. There's my total, 355. So I'm just using this like a calculator now. Under proportion, I can do the same thing. Proportions are just taking a part divided by the whole. So I can say equals, proportion of math, 205, backslash is divide by the total. And there's my proportion, 0.577. And here, 150 divided by my total, proportion 0.423 if we round. And I could even do the total here if I want. It should be 1 though. Yep, there we go. So now I can just simply highlight this and Control C and paste it in using the spreadsheet, calculate the sums and proportions, number 2 here. The next one is using stat key. We can go to stat key right here. I have a link. Or you can just type in stat key and it'll bring you here. So we're going to use stat key to create a simple graph of this data set right here, column E. Now I know we could do this in spreadsheet just as easily. The reason we're using stat key is I just want you to get used to using this because very quickly we're going to move into more complicated stuff that you won't be able to do very easily in Excel or on spreadsheets without downloading a whole bunch of statistics packages. So under stat key here, we're going to go to one categorical variable. All right, and here this is a bunch of preloaded sets of data. We're going to put in our own data. So we're going to say edit data. The data that's there we'll just highlight and delete. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in all of this column E data. So I can highlight it, Control C or copy, come right over here, Control V, paste it. It looks like I've done nothing, but if I scroll up, there's all the data right there. You can see down here, there's some of those blanks I was talking about. Now, this is raw data, so we're going to click that and just hit OK. And there it is. Look at the same numbers, same proportions, just like we did. It's kind of a nice where I can click on this and it highlights math 205, proportion 0.577. So you could copy and paste this or take a screenshot of this and put it into your assignment here. Of course, doing that with your own categorical data, some different categorical data. Now, that's playing around with spreadsheets and StatKey with one categorical variable. Now we're going to look at how to do it with two variables. So let's say, as an example, I wanted to compare gender and SAT scores. All right. So I could create a table like this again, but I'm going to show you an alternative way. We're going to make something called a pivot table, which is just another name for a two-way table. And I want to highlight all of this data. I can click on this box right here, and it will quickly highlight all of the data. And under data, I'm going to go to pivot table. And this is the beginnings of my pivot table. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my rows have the gender and my columns have the math and verbal SAT score. So over here on row, I can just say add gender. All right. And for column, I can say add higher SAT. There we go. And if I scroll down here, make these go away. Oh, hold on. Sorry. Add gender. There we go. Sorry, I'm just working around this here. I go to values and add. And let's see if I can make my way around this. I can barely see it. You'll do better with seeing this. I'm going to add values for gender. I can add them for either the SAT or gender. And it'll put the values in over here. It looks a little funky here because it's counting those blank cells I told you about earlier. And what we could do if we want is we can click on this, right click and say hide column where it's getting funny. Like these is showing that there's 4 blank cells for female and I'm sorry, for the math scores and verbal scores, SAT scores. So I can hide that too. And I can even hide this row. That makes it look a little nicer. So, okay, now I have a nice two-way table. I could add in proportions here as well if I wanted to. So there's that piece. The next thing we're going to do is go ahead and go back to StatKey, and we're going to do two categorical variables. So just click on StatKey. It'll bring us back to the main page. Two categorical variables. And we're going to go ahead and make just a stacked bar graph. All right. So edit data. We'll delete their data. We'll come back here. We're not going to take the data off the pivot table. We'll take it off of our actual data here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on column B. On my keyboard, I hit the control button, hold the control button down, and click on E, and that will highlight just those two. You might have to play around with that to see which button it is, whether it's control or shift or on your keyboard. So those are the two I'm going to take. So I'll control C, copy those two. Come back over to StatKey, control V. It all just got pasted in there. It's raw data, which simply means there's no commas in here. So I want to click on that, otherwise it may not work. Say OK. And there we go. We have a nice, that same pivot table right here. Right. Again, I can click here and see that it's talking about females 81 for math for the math SAT, or here it highlights in the table males verbal at 66. I could switch the variables, right? I can also look at proportions here. So there's our proportions if we want to get an idea of that aspect. And I think you can also click on Show a Legend if you'd like. Once you have that, you can screenshot or highlight and copy and paste this into your sheet. All right, and that's for 4 and 5 using the stat key and using spreadsheet. So what I encourage you to do now is just use this as a tutorial and choose your own variables. Ask yourself an interesting question. You know, how does, for example, this one, of course, was how does your performance on the SAT, math versus verbal, compare to your gender, right? Good luck. Bye.